Cliptonians, welcome back to another Diablo 4 update video. Yesterday we had some massive updates, probably the biggest that we have ever seen since the launch of Diablo 4. It was so big, I'm going to have to break it all down into several videos to cover all of it. I'm going to recap the major highlights from the PTR feedback first. The devs listened, and they made some really great changes. Before we hop into the updates and all of these crazy changes, I want to give everybody a quick reminder of when the launch of the Vessel of Hatred is going to take place. It will be a global launch, so for me, it's going to be launching at 1 p.m. Hawaiian Standard Time. You can find where you're at on the map and figure out what time it's going to be launching for you, and you can join us for the launch of the season. Let's start with the difficulty changes that came out of the PTR. Monster intensity has changed. It is now only during the tormented levels. What intensity means is that monsters' attacks will be more precise. The AI gets better the higher you go into the torment levels. So you're going to feel the monsters attack better. Their AoE is going to hit just a little bit more. It doesn't necessarily mean that the damage is more, but they get more skilled as you go through the torment levels. In your normal difficulties, before you reach torment all the way through penitent, you won't feel this anymore. So they removed it from the earlier stages and they put it only in the progression of the end game. Elites will now deal the same amount of damage. Have you ever been running through a dungeon? You kill an elite pack, you're like, that was easy. And then all of a sudden, the next elite pack, you're dead. Well, they had an explanation for that. And the reason was there are 3 types of elites. You had a regular elite, a unique elite, and then a super elite. Now, if you ran through a group of normal elites, and you came up against a super elite, then that damage was scaling up because of that change in elite quality. So if you weren't expecting it and you weren't ready for it, you would die. This will help eliminate some of all of those one-shots that we're feeling because they're going to normalize the damage. Every single elite pack is going to feel exactly the same. So if you're looking to challenge yourself, they now have unlocked Penton right here at level 1. It is highly suggested that you do not start there, especially on your first character. You don't have any materials, you don't have any elixirs, you don't have anything that has transferred from your main character to your alt character. So if you are just starting out, I would highly suggest starting in either normal, hard, or expert before you make that leap into penitent. If you want to feel what it feels like, hop on in because you now have the option to do it right away. We had huge wins on itemization coming out of the PTR. When you were playing on the PTR and you found a legendary piece of gear, you could only temper it once, and you could only masterwork it to 4. That means you really could not get an endgame build up and running, because that additional temper makes all of the difference. And then going from 4 all the way up to 12 is a huge power jump. So the real question was, and something that I felt personally, was how do you get your endgame build up and running when you can't farm endgame gear because you can't do the endgame content? The devs listened to everyone. You can now add 2 tempers onto a regular piece of legendary gear. So you see the example right here. This is a regular piece of legendary gear, and it now has 2 tempers on it. You can also go from rank 4 to 8 now. This was a really big win because now you can hit 2 masterworking crits instead of just 1. So that is going to be a big source of power as well as that second temper. Doing all of this now will allow us to feel what our endgame builds are going to actually feel like before we get the ancestral gear. So this is going to be a huge change for us. Player power has changed significantly from the PTR. When we hit the PTR, just like every other PTR, we ran straight to the end of the pits, started pushing tier 100, which was max, over and over, and very quickly at that. That was not what the devs intended. And of course, we found a way. We always find a way. So what they've done is that they've scaled that back a lot. So if you look at the little graph here, normal will still feel like normal. Penitent, however, will now feel like Torment 1. And when I got to Torment 1 on the character on my PTR, this was the very first character I had. I had only legendary gear, no ancestrals. I had 1 temper and 4 masterworking. I went into Hell Tides because I was like, this will be easy, a breeze. Holy cow, I was wrong. The monsters did not want to die. I could kill them, but it was not what Helltide feels like in tier 4 with a character that has some gear on it. Torment 1 is going to feel like Torment 2. Torment 2 is going to feel like 3. 3 just like 4. And now Torment 4 is going to feel like level 80 of the pits used to be. And now getting to level 80 in the pits is going to feel like pit 100. And there were a lot of people that tried to put builds together that could not clear 100 on the PTR. So why would they do this? They made the game much harder. So how are you going to progress and get your gear? How are you going to put together your endgame builds? Why would this be a change that they thought would be okay? If you look at where the Torment goals are, Torment 1, you have every single bit of content available. And not only that, you can find all of the best gear in the game in Torment 1. Torment 2, 3, and 4 are there to give you an exponential increase to the drop rates, or as they call it, efficiency. They want Tier 4 to be what you are aspiring to get into. Tier 1 is going to be where you start your farm. Then you're going to work into Tier 2 as you start getting your ancestral gear. You're going to start finding all of the tempers you want. You're going to level up your glyphs a little bit more. As your glyphs get higher up, you're going to move into Torment 3. And finally, when you have really solid build, you've nailed down your gear, you have your Paragon board all set up, you know exactly how to push it, you're going to push into Torment 4. That is the way the progression is going to feel. So you have to take this into account. You have to change how you think about the game. Currently, in the season that we're playing right now, the goal is to go straight to Tier 4, right away. That is where you're going to find all your gear. And if you don't get to Tier 4, you can't get ancestral gear. You're stuck with sacred gear. So right now, in the current season, Tier 4 is the end of it. They want us to change around the way we're looking. Torment 1 is the end. Torment 4 is what we are going to push towards to feel really how our builds are put together. So that's all fun. They made the game harder, and then again, they're going to pull back our stats. They are reverting back to Season 5. So the main stat conversion rate from Season 5 is going to be less skill damage from your main stats. It was increased on the PTR. And not only that, they are taking the legendary glyphs that they boosted by so much, and they're making the additive damage and the multiplicative damage significantly reduced. They talked about it a lot. What their goal was to take those glyphs, which were so powerful, and spread that power out into other places. They buffed some regular nodes of the Paragon board. They rearranged how the boards were set up, specifically to take the power that was only in one source and spread it out so everything else felt like it had some meaning to it. I've had a lot of people that have mentioned that they love seeing these big numbers, and why do they keep nerfing our damage back? Don't they know that people love to do this? If we don't, and I'd like to tell the story. I tried Diablo 3 again. I hopped into the game. I joined someone's party. They said, here, come teleport to me. I was immediately max level. It took 30 seconds. And then I started watching people play, and it was trillions, 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 trillions. That's all that was popping up on the screen. So where is the satisfaction in those numbers? How do you know what you're reaching for? The devs have to scale this back so we can still see that we're making improvements, not just doing trillions, and we still get that sense of satisfaction. When I was playing on the PTR, every time that I hit a new goal number, I hit 50 million, I hit 75 million, I hit 100 million. I completely forgot that in the normal season, I was doing billions because those numbers felt like, okay, I can feel this power increase. I want to get more. So you're going to feel it still. And the way that they're doing it, I actually really, really like. So I mentioned Paragon Updates. Here is what the changes are. More normal nodes to support the legendary glyph upgrade radius. When you get to your legendary glyphs, this is the radius that you're going to be getting. Inside that radius, it was the way that it used to be. So if you look at a picture right now of your current Paragon board, compared to this, there are so many more normal nodes inside of this board, so you can take advantage of the new radius of the glyph. They've updated all of the rare nodes across the boards. Some examples that they gave us, which everybody laughed about on the dev stream, they removed potion healing. Finally, it's now going to be healing received. And as you saw in some of the Starlight builds, we actually needed that healing received in some of the builds that we were doing, so this might actually be pretty beneficial. Damage reduction from dots is now just going to be straight damage reduction. So they're trying to condense those damage on Tuesday into specific useful stats. So now instead of damage reduction from dots, it's straight damage reduction. Instead of damage reduction from poison, it'll be damage reduction. They doubled all of the additive bonuses on the magic and the rare nodes. So if you look on the screen, this probably would have been 30 damage to elites. Now it is 60 damage to elites. So what they're doing is they're trying to make this a little bit more useful so that going into these rare and magic nodes actually feels like it has a purpose. One really cool thing that they did is that all of the damage reduction is now increased by 1.5. So they're going to give us more damage reduction from our Paragon board. So we're actually going to feel a lot of power creep and a lot of survivability from the Paragon board itself. And here we go, the one that everybody has been waiting for. The Infernal Hordes. Some of the problems and some of the feedback that I got: loot was dominating the reward landscape, frustrating and tedious reward flow, difficult to target farm uniques. For those of you that didn't know, inside of the Infernal Hordes is the only place that you can get some specific uniques. Also, if you opened up one of those gear chests with 1,000 ether, you were getting ancestral after ancestral after ancestral. You got so much gear that there really wasn't any need to go anywhere else in the game for it. So what they were going to be doing, keys are going to be exclusively obtained via drops from a variety of activities. This means that the only place you can get your keys to get inside the Infernal Hordes is from drops. That means that you cannot craft them. We will not be able to spam the Infernal Hordes like we are now. This is a really great time to hop into a Discord server with a great community like the one that we have. We have almost 1,300 people in the Discord server. The link is going to be in the description below. Hop in, come and play with us, because the more people that you have access to these keys, the more Infernal Hordes you can run. To help with people trying to farm these Infernal Horde uniques, because the uniques are really, really good. Most of the uniques are used in a lot of the builds that have come out now. The council bosses always drop the Infernal Horde uniques, and the dungeon boss loot is going to scale with your tormented levels. They had some great, really, really necessary chest updates for the loot at the very end of the Infernal Hordes. The chest of greater equipment is going to be 200 ether. The chest of materials converts all remaining ether into materials. They finally did it. We don't have to stand there for longer than it took to do the Infernal Hordes, clicking the loot button on your chest. And then the chest of gold remains unchanged. Rewards from across the game have been changing as well. They significantly increased the ancestral drop rate from nightmare dungeons and whispers. I love this change because I actually love doing nightmare dungeons. In the very early stages of Diablo 4, we would log on and we would run nightmare dungeons all night long. You'd get somebody that was new, somebody that needed to level up some glyphs or something, and you just ran nightmare dungeons. It was fun to do, and now nightmare dungeons have a purpose because that's where you're going to get your masterworking materials from. So now you get masterworking materials and a very increased chance to drop ancestral gear. This is a big change from the PTR, because on the PTR, according to the dev, someone ran 1,000 nightmare dungeons and recorded how many ancestral uniques dropped, and it was not a lot. So they boosted it significantly. Nightmare dungeons now provide experience on completion, miscellaneous buffs to different things around the world of Sanctuary. Hellborns, the Butcher, the world bosses, and the treasure goblins all got buffs to their loot. A lot of people keep saying the world bosses need better loot. Well, now the world bosses have better loot. We'll see what that looks like, but at least it's something, and it's a consideration that they're taking on. The meta for leveling strongholds. This is changing just a little bit. It's still huge. They're taking the experience that you used to get on the first time completion, and it's being adjusted from 2 levels to 1.25 levels. You can still get an entire level from doing one stronghold. They now have a purpose, but it is only on your first completion. So you cannot run the same stronghold over and over and over again. You have to kill the boss. How about this? In Torment 1 and up, non-legendary items are auto-salvaged. That is amazing. Anytime that is something that is not legendary drops, all you're going to do is pick up salvage materials. You're going to have so many salvage materials. It is going to be a huge quality of life change. If you guys didn't know this yet, the pits are now going to be used to level up your glyphs. What they've done is they've now added the glyphs to the pits so that when you complete the dungeon, it has a chance to drop one of the glyphs. This is going to be amazing because you should be able to get glyphs in the spot that you can level up the glyphs. Blizzard is going really hard down the crafting items path. This has some good and then unfortunately some bad news, and we'll cover the bad news at the very end. Mythic Unique crafting has been updated. Some of the feedback that they got was that people wanted to be able to complete the season journey and get through all of the content that they needed to do to get their sparks, and then be able to craft a mythic unique, which you cannot do right now. You always ended up one short. So they changed that. They moved the crafting of mythic uniques to the blacksmith, so don't go to the alchemist. It now requires 2 resplendent sparks instead of 4, but you are only going to get a random one. So you cannot pick which one you want now. If you do want to pick it, you can get resplendent sparks, and then you have to use runes to craft at the jeweler, and that will give you the specific ones that you want. 2 resplendent sparks plus a set of runes crafts a specific ancestral mythic unique. That means you will always have a greater affix on mythic uniques. Large amounts of the common salvage material, which we're going to be getting because everything will be auto salvaged now. A lot of us would just leave the yellow gear on the ground, run past the blue gear, run past the white gear. Now it's getting auto-salvaged, so we're going to have a ton of salvage materials. So what they've done is at the forge, you can craft a random legendary piece of equipment. Inside of that craft, you have a chance for uniques and mythics. Sockets can now be added to gear with general salvage materials. You don't have to use a scattered prism unless it is an ancestral piece of gear. So up until you start finding your ancestral gear, when you're at the end game already, you can add sockets to your gear without needing those scattered prisms. Jewelers no longer have a level requirement. This seems kind of small, but it actually is pretty big because when you create an alt, you can actually use runes before the jeweler unlocks the ability to put in sockets. So now when you create an alt, you can use runes at the level that they start dropping. And now for the bad news. We're going to circle right back to how you craft mythic uniques. Currently, with the way that they have set it up, crafting a mythic unique is going to require runes. In order to have runes, you have to have the Vessel of Hatred. So what it seems is that you will be able to craft a lot more mythic uniques, but you're going to be locked behind the Vessel of Hatred to craft specific ones. This might be something that Blizzard looks at adjusting in the future. We don't know yet, but for now, that is the current state. And those are just a fraction of some of the crazy changes that are being made in this season and this expansion pack. Let me know what you think of the changes in the comments, the good, the bad, the whatever. I'm live on YouTube and Twitch every night. Hopefully, I see you there. Catch you on the clip side.